Hello, welcome along to our Getting Copilot Ready briefing. I'm Matthew Tucker. I'm a business development manager here at Quintech, and we are an MSP, for want of a better word. We offer our customers cloud-based apps, data analysis, networking, cybersecurity solutions, IT consultancy, and everything in. We like to work with you as a partner, and we take the time to understand your unique strengths and challenges so that we can create the solutions to support your long-term goals going forward. So that's a little bit about us. Essentially what we're here to do today is to have a little talk about AI, and why we're at this point as well is probably one of the most important elements. So I'm going to show you some practical examples as we go through. And any questions that you have, you can fire away at the end or reach out to me. My email is on the screen, should be on the screen in front of you now. So let's get on with it. The world is changing, which I'm sure we're all aware of. We're at a unique moment in time. It's made possible in a large part by the digitization of businesses. And everything is moving to that digitization. I think even today, Keir Starmer's announced the digitization of the NHS. And again, this is one of these things. It is transforming entire industries, sectors, if you like. The macroeconomic environment itself is actually shifting, and we're at what we call a technological inflection point. And the way to describe that is probably best done on this graph. So I'm not sure how many of you remember the invention of the mobile phone, or as it became more prevalent within society. It took 16 years for that technology on a commercial launch to reach 100 million users. So 16 years for mobile phones to reach 100 million users. When you look at the internet, it only took itself 7 years to again get to that 100 million user point. Facebook, I'm sure we're all familiar with Facebook, love it or loathe it, took 4.5 years to get to the same 100 million users. So when we're talking about AI, probably the one that everyone recognizes is ChatGPT. 3 months into ChatGPT after launch, it already had that 100 million users. It's a real acceleration in the uptake, and it's providing unique opportunities for our customers, but for your customers as well. And what that means is you can use it to enhance your customer journey or speed of journey as well. So if we have a look at the technical revolutions or industrial revolutions going through time, as we go through this platform shift, history's really taught us that technology does drive GDP growth, and the pace of that change itself is accelerating. Technology spend has than GDP for the last decade. So historically, tech is a GDP growth multiplier, 4 times in the 1800s, 20 times over the last century, and AI is going to be the next big sort of leg up in that driver for the world's economic growth. Copilot's something that has been launched and used for a period of time now, and we're starting to get some really interesting feedback from that. So from a target pool, essentially. You're talking over 31,000 users though. So one of the predominant narratives that we find around AI is the notion that employees are fearful, and they're fearful that it ultimately put them out of a job. 49% of the respondents had some concerns about job security. So that's across that 31,000 people. I think that's based in around 31 different countries. So while they did have concerns about job security, a staggering 70% of them would still choose to delegate as much work as possible to AI. They want to do this to lessen their workload of the mundane tasks. So if you look at that at a simple basis, employees do know what's in it for them. the promise of the relief of the mundanity task being removed seems to outweigh the threat. And it's important in that respect that when we deal with the employee engagement, we actually get their buy-in. We show them what the benefits are to them, as opposed to just talk about AI. And that's really where you're going to get that drive from your employees to want it. And in fact, when we actually look at those employees that were using it, they'd actually prefer, instead of having a subsidized lunch or a free lunch, 80% of them would actually prefer to have CoPilot as part of their everyday work. So in the same way that you could say, I don't know, a canteen subsidised, what they'd actually rather see is, we use CoPilot within our business, because that shows them that their work there, they can take that mundanity out of it. And those are those people that are actually using it. So I think that's a very big talking point. The other point there is actually 30% of those employees now say that use of CoPilot would actually influence their choice of employer. So employers that have CoPilot, it would influence them over another employer, exactly the same job, exactly the same money, that didn't have CoPilot. I think that's quite a unique thing. Certainly for me, using CoPilot now, it's definitely something that I wouldn't want to be without. I think that's fair to say. The problem with the mundanity is that 64% of employees don't feel they've got the time, energy to do their job. The primary cause of this time and energy drain is actually things like searching for information, navigating inefficient meetings, and 60% of them said that they're actually they're spending 60% of their time on either communicating or coordinating. So organizing things, communicating information out, meetings, if you will, emails, etc., etc. So only 40% of their time is spent in what we call either creation, deep thinking, and collaboration, i.e. the things that actually drive the business forward from a creative point of view. Simply put, the volume of data through emails, chats, whatever it may be, library resources, etc., internal library resources, has drastically outpaced our ability to process it all. Essentially, it's digital debt. So it's that overload. Every minute spent managing this debt is a minute not spent on the creative work. And in a world where obviously productivity is a big thing, digital debt becomes more than just an inconvenience. It is really impacting those businesses. So that's an important thing to understand, and not all of us really register that digital debt. Certainly something, again, using CoPilot, you then become very aware of how much time you were spending doing things because you've actually got more time. A recent study has shown that 87% of leaders believe AI will give their organization a competitive edge. I think that's a huge stat. They seem to be asking themselves right now, how, though, will our organization seize the full potential of AI? So it needs to still safeguard your business, safeguard your data, and empower your employees. So, as we said earlier, employees that buy into the shift in this technology will be its biggest advocate. How do we prepare? So it's really simple. To start looking at AI and what are the benefits or how we can use it, we really need to understand, take that pause and think through these 5 important questions as I'd see it. What are your business's goals for using AI? What are the pain points within the business or the organization that can be addressed by AI? What are our current capabilities of AI? And do we have the data strategy in place? Do we also have the necessary infrastructure and resources to support AI and the initiatives around it? Each of these elements really help guide and shape the organization, but also how you will bring AI into that organization as well. And essentially what we've got is we've got our business's foundational productivity. What that means is, what do we do? How do we do it? And then how can that be filtered through CoPilot, essentially? So becoming an AI-powered business really takes there are three key steps, to that foundational productivity. So we want to start helping our employees, empower them with secure AI-powered tools like CoPilot, obviously. We also want to enhance our commercial data protection, learn how to use CoPilot in the workplace today, as in its daily use. And it's an important step to really get started with this generative AI securely. The skill development around using AI in the workplace will be critical for users to really quickly adapt and adopt CoPilot for 365 when it becomes available to them. And I can't really emphasize that enough. It's one thing to have CoPilot sat there. How you interface with it is really, really where it becomes useful. So I can ask it a question. However, if I ask it what it considers to be a stupid question, I'm going to get a slow and not accurate response. So by learning how to prompt it, so anyone that's used ChatGPT will know this. So once I know how to prompt it correctly, my outcome from it becomes a lot more useful. And that's really part of that employee uptake as well. So if you're on Microsoft 365, what a good way in terms of this foundational productivity and getting things correctly aligned is making sure that our data is available in a cloud environment. It's better positioned to harness AI's potential, and it allows different versions in terms of the immersion into CoPilot as well. So when I say that, the different elements, let's say, really important. So if you are on 365, that's an important place to go into the cloud. So this is really where now we're there, CoPilot comes into its own. And essentially, the benefits are business data and its protection. So it's making sure that your data is protected. And when you're using CoPilot, it's really important to understand it doesn't save prompts and it doesn't save answers. It doesn't use that information, that interaction, to train the model externally. So really, it's ring fencing your information and making sure it stays in your organization, in your knowledge pool. Access to these powerful AI models. CoPilot uses GPT-4 for text and DAL, I'm going to call it E3 for images. The latest in sort of the Microsoft version of AI models. Not to mention that this access comes at no additional cost on these licenses. So that's an important thing to reference as well. Once you have CoPilot, you have CoPilot. The other thing is that actually it's very transparent and it's very current. So CoPilot will actually cite the data sources behind its answers. So whether that's an internal document or an external document, it will actually allow you to reference those. It's also providing up-to-date answers in terms of its knowledge, and there's no date cut off for that knowledge as well. So that really makes a big difference as well. Employees and teams can then leverage CoPilot to help them do the tasks that summarize PDFs, tasks like summarizing PDFs quickly, drafting emails more efficiently, getting answers to complex questions with more ease. And these are really simple workday uses that actually take a lot of time. So it's an important thing to understand what it's doing for you. Putting presentations together becomes so much easier. What it doesn't do everything. What it does is it gives you that base that you can then edit, as opposed to having to start from scratch, for example. And that's a massive step forward. So instead of having to start from scratch, I've got a framework that I can work with. And that's just one application. So CoPilot itself, we've got a couple of different sort of levels. We've got a free CoPilot. It's got some foundational capabilities, some web grounding, and it obviously has the commercial data protection. The CoPilot for 365 gives us a lot more depth Some of these things you might recognize, some of them you might not. So what we're looking though is to make sure, what we're looking to do, sorry, is to make sure that when we're using the 365 version, that our employees are ready for this new aptitude. So they're ready to understand how it integrates into their systems and how it empowers them to work with it, knowing it's secure for you, and these tools are for the modern workplace. I think there's a stat that I find quite interesting. So for the last 3 years, each year has seen a 79% increase year on year in the number of jobs, and let's look at LinkedIn as one reference, for example, posting the reference GPT or GAI within their job descriptions. GAI being generative, artificial intelligence. So jobs are actually putting this into their specifications, so to speak. And I think that shows again in the last 3 years how much of that is increasing in terms of what people physically see. So those empowered with it will understand it and know the benefits of it. The last slide we saw obviously looked at a difference between some of those AI offerings. CoPilot and CoPilot for Microsoft 365 work together to help your users in your organization be more productive. They keep the company data protected, and the way it's grounded in the company data, such as your emails, your meetings and files, encourage the use of it as well. So I find it quite easy to explore. I know my colleagues here have felt the same thing, that have access to it, and it really does enable that usage of it. And I think that's an important thing to remember. So it's allowing people to use it as an interface. So businesses that migrate their data to the cloud will be better positioned to harness AI's transformative potential. Nice and simple statement there. The foundational productivity that we find within 365 allows us to cross all of the 365 apps as well. It's built on zero trust. That basically the element around zero trust is a phraseology. It's ensuring that every access point to our network, your network, and data is authenticated, protected, and reduces, therefore, the risk of security breaches. Robust endpoint management allows for seamless device control and maintenance, security enforcement, and a very stable work environment. And again, that's what we want. Productivity and collaboration tools are designed to work together to help us be more effective and efficient. Through this comprehensive solution, all these capabilities with a stack of products under each are designed to work together to minimize the operations cost and complexity. Personally, zero trust and simplified endpoint management are a boiling pot, basically, of the right elements to have that collaborative experience. And I think that's what we want our users to have. So let's go through the elements again on there. We can help you by standardizing the information on 365. So getting onto the cloud and being able to harness it, as we said already. So what does that really look like? It inherits, so CoPilot inherits your organization's existing 365 security if you are on 365, obviously. So that's compliance, it's privacy policies. The data is logically isolated and protected within the 365 system, and it's always within your control. So by design, I suppose CoPilot respects user-specific and group permissions to any content or information that it retrieves. It will generate responses based on the information that that user specifically and explicitly has permission to access. So it's helping companies really assess the data, make sure it's done within security policies, and that the information that is being seen by people that have or should have the access to it. You can classify teams to ensure that that team has the right permission rights. It's not just about individuals, it can be done in so many different ways. And it's something that's really important to understand is it is keeping your data secure. Again, a company like ourselves, this is where we can really help with that setup, making sure that those permissions are in the right, those permissions are granted to the right people within the organization, those end users, to make sure that content oversharing and accidental leakage just doesn't happen. So we'll go in and have a little look at the CoPilot elements themselves and what sort of makes it unique. So we're working with the large language models. We're working with your data, something that Microsoft will call the graph, and then the apps within Microsoft 365, also the internet. So those are our four sort of elements to the process. So it's built on security, compliance, privacy, and responsible AI. We've all heard what everyone thinks of irresponsible AI, especially in the world of cybersecurity. We see users trying to weaponize AI to create better phishing emails, whatever they may be. So we're using AI to really combat that in that way. But used within this interface, within the correct setup, it becomes a massively powerful and responsible system. It enables us, or the users, to free our minds from the tools and the repetitive tasks so that we can spend more time focused on what matters most. Running the day-to-day business, growing your customers, building your brand, scaling securely. You'll be able to serve your customers better with Outlook, land more deals, grow your customer base, and build your brand more creatively, effectively, I'm going to say efficiently as well, with using Word, PowerPoint, etc., etc. So we're going to have a little look at this in action. These are the apps, obviously, that you should be familiar with. So we've got Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Office, and Teams. So let's dive in. First,
well,
we have a nice
straight
little
to the
video.
top, never going down, don't wait for the drop. Stand still, that's the motto. Yeah. Brand new bands for the auto. Oh, foot to the ground, full throttle. Big energy for the night like lotto. Y'all talk lots, never this quiet. Life like a Seinfeld plot. Vault full of songs, all of them bombs. Something like a minefield guy. Boom. Get it, tickets running out quick. Bet it, never get it out big. Said it, never had to shout it. They said I couldn't never do it, okay, how's it? Fit a week worth of work in a minute. Machine well oiled, you know how I stay efficient. To-do list written, I do this different. Hold up, wait a minute, I ain't finished. Look, flows the same now. Paved the way to snakes and fakes and chased out back to back to back. I changed the pace now, had to stack the cash until the bank's out. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
Lovely. So let's have a look at Teams. This is essentially something that's become more prevalent since COVID, how we work. And this is a really good way that it'll give you some ideas on how we can do it.
Imagine you have an appointment that conflicts with your weekly business review. What if you could do both? With CoPilot, you can opt to follow a meeting. After the meeting ends, CoPilot will summarize what you missed. You'll get a notification in Teams when the recap is ready. This recap will highlight content that was shared, summarize notes, and any action items for you or others whose names were mentioned. You see that one of your customers was discussed, and you want to learn more. You can ask CoPilot clarifying questions, and it provides a detailed response. It can tell you why a certain decision was made, and gives you helpful context. You can even ask CoPilot what other solutions were considered, and it provides citations from the transcript so you can see where CoPilot drew these conclusions. It's a huge time saver. So that was pretty cool. But the real magic of Copilot happens during a live meeting. Let's say you're in a meeting with your team. You can ask Copilot to summarize the meeting so far. You can see how it summarizes who said what points were made, and it's really capturing the spirit of the discussion. And as the meeting progresses, you can check in on where people stand. You can even ask Copilot what questions are unresolved. It's just amazing to see this happen in real time during a meeting.
Nice and simple. For me, the meetings is something that's amazing. So you can record the meetings, obviously, get a transcript from those meetings as well. You can then interrogate them. You can also use them if they're with the customer to send them the action points, bullet points from that meeting as well. And it's really simple, very quick to do that. It stops you having to make on-the-fly notes, which can be distracting from the meeting as well. And I think that's something that just can't be understated, essentially. So let's have a look in Outlook.
Copilot in Outlook can help you prioritize your time and stay on top of meetings. Here you've been invited to a meeting that conflicts with a meeting you're planning to attend. Clearly, you can only attend one. From the meeting invite, you can choose to RSVP with follow. Switching over to your calendar, you can see that you're now following this meeting. Once the meeting starts on Teams, the organizer will receive a notification to record the meeting because someone is following it. Now, after the meeting is done and the recording is ready, Copilot will notify you that the meeting recap is ready for you to review. You can then ask Copilot some questions about the meeting, like, summarize this meeting, or are there any action items for me? That way you can stay on top of things as if you were present during the meeting.
So again, one of the elements here is I don't have to chase anyone for a recording of the meeting. It does it all for me. It reminds me that it's there. And that's just such a simple
Copilot in Outlook can help you prioritize your time and stay on top of meetings. Here you've been invited to a meeting that conflicts with a meeting.
I'll go to the next one. Onto Word.
When you've written a paragraph in shorthand, you can highlight it and click Rewrite. Copilot then offers several alternate options to choose from that are all written professionally. And it can translate wordy or complex paragraphs into digestible visualized tables. You can even use Copilot to add a column with extra data, which it can complete automatically. Copilot also makes you the expert on any document. Simply ask a question about the content, and Copilot will provide a concise response.
So again, it really does transform Word. Every part of the creative process. It allows that designer integration, custom graphics, allowing them to be populated into the document. And it also uses the context of our stock, so to speak. So the visuals that it will use. We can upload, customize our own images for a more personal touch, but it's really there to support you. So I'm dyslexic, and something like this and being able to use it to understand the context of that paragraph that it pointed out enables me to reply in a much more thorough manner. Obviously, spell check's still there, but you can ask it to create it from your notes as well, and that becomes even more important and useful. Look at Excel.
Copilot puts all the rich capabilities of Excel at your fingertips. Say you need to analyze this quarter sales results for the monthly business review. You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need, but you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, giving you a sandbox to play in, and helping you get a better understanding of what's happening without modifying the data in the original sheet. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig a little deeper and ask a follow-up question with a what-if scenario. CoPilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model of the scenario, and even asks you if you want to learn more about what it did, with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. CoPilot has turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
Massively powerful. Those of us that have used Excel or Power BI, for example, this is doing that work for you just by standard, easy interface questions. They're taking a lot of the skill that's there and just making it accessible for everyday users, essentially.
Microsoft 365 Copilot works with the data security controls you have in place for file access, labeling, classification, and data loss prevention. Mario Rogers works for Violet Martinez, and both are on the same team at Contoso. Mario and Violet are also members in the same group working on Project Falcon. Now we'll start with Violet, who's been working with the procurement and contract management teams to sell their partner ReliCloud 1,500 Mark 8 quadcopters. And you can see the file is labeled highly confidential with restricted access, and it describes all the terms in the purchase agreement. Because Violet has access to the file, she's able to search for and find it in SharePoint and Microsoft365.com. And of course, Violet can also navigate to the file's location in the agreements folder of the project site to find the purchase agreement. So now let's look at Mario's experience. Even though he's on the same team and working on Project Falcon with Violet, if Mario tries to search for the Contoso purchase agreement, he won't find it. And there are a few purchasing documents that he does find without sensitive information, but not the one that Violet's working on. And if Mario knows the location of the purchase agreement and tries to navigate to it directly, it just appears as an empty folder to him. And when Mario launches Word on the web and creates a blank document, then prompts Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the Contoso purchase agreement as a reference file, because Microsoft 365 Copilot respects the file permissions of its user, Copilot also cannot access the purchase agreement. Now, if we switch back to Violet's screen, because she has permission to access the purchase agreement, she can use Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the file. And after a moment, you'll see it created a summary of the purchase agreement, and Violet decides to keep it. Then data security controls for Microsoft Purview discover sensitive information found in the Microsoft 365 Copilot generated content. The document is automatically labeled as highly confidential, and policies are enforced to restrict access to the document.
So again, this for me is so important. So even if we're creating stuff, it's automatically labeling it. It's respecting those policies. And again, it can't be emphasized enough how important that is for the companies, the employers, sort of safety appetite for this data.
Microsoft
365 Copilot is transforming work with the power of generative AI. It's built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach to enterprise-grade security, compliance, privacy, identity, and responsible AI. Copilot automatically inherits your organization's Microsoft 365 security, compliance, and privacy policies, so you know your data is protected and always in your control. It all starts with your Microsoft 365 tenant. Data stored in your tenant is encrypted and only available to the users within that tenant. Your existing Microsoft 365 permissions and policies ensure that data won't leak between users and groups. And Copilot users only have access to data they've been granted permission to see in Microsoft 365, using the same technology customers have relied on for years. Your tenant sits inside the Microsoft 365 service boundary, where Microsoft's commitments to security, compliance, data location, and privacy are upheld. The Copilot large language models, or LLMs, that process your data sit within that same boundary, much like other Microsoft 365 services. Microsoft does not have eyes-on access, which means no one can view your data. Your data is not used to train the LLMs. And our EU customers can be confident that their data is processed within the EU data boundary. Microsoft 365 Copilot enterprise-grade security and privacy for the era of generative AI.
So again, it's worth noting GDPR, and again, we're that compliant angle on that as well. I think it's always useful to just have a look at the sort of principles that we've got. There's 6 core principles that should guide the work around AI. 4 principles, the core ones, I suppose, are fairness, reliability, safety, privacy, and security. The underpinning of those in terms of what needs to happen really is transparency and accountability. So making sure that the information that's been used in terms of how you're receiving it on your screen is transparent, what's cited, where did it come from, etc. And it's really making sure that that is known. That does give us that accountability, and I think that's really important to understand. Fairness is one. I think that the system should treat everyone fairly. It should avoid affecting different situated groups of people in different ways. Obviously, reliability, we need to trust it. It needs to operate in that basis. It needs to be online. It needs to be available to us. And it's not subject to unexpected conditions. So that's really important. The elements here for us in terms of early access, these are sort of some of the feedback that people have given, and I just love these. As someone that's been using it myself, I can really see the benefits to it, not just for me, but actually other people's within the organization itself. And I think that's important to see, is that the use of it doesn't just affect you, it affects the business and the wider business as well. So that's a very powerful message. How can you get started? It's a really good point. So you need to know what 365 service you're on. We can then look at from that where you are, what you need to do, and how you need to leverage your service, basically your product, to get the best out of it. There's lots of resources for adoption. There's resources again for security, privacy, and compliance. That's what we're here to help you with. It's quite simple. That's a company like ourselves. That's what we're here to facilitate with you, to make your life easier in terms of the transition, the uptake of this technology. I've got a quick screen here. If any of you have got phones, you can scan that and fill in a little form, which would be greatly appreciated. So if you've got time to do that, that's great. We'll send that out to an email, on an email to you all as well. But obviously, while it's fresh in your head, that would be great. So realistically, that's the discussion for today. I hope it's not been too long-winded or I've stammered too much. And if you get any questions, then you can pop those across to us. You can email me. You've got my details there. If you want a conversation about it and where to start, or a look at your current setup as well, where are you? Then again, we can facilitate that for you as well. So from me, unless you've got any questions that you want to fire into the chat, I think we're there. I'm just checking the chat, and I don't think we do. Brilliant. So I've taken 42 minutes of your time. That's really kind of you. Thank you for joining us today, and I look to speak to you again. Take care.